The situation at Gobekli Tepe is far more serious and concerning than I had imagined. In fact, if there is such a thing as an ancient conspiracy theory, this is it. I recently made a video exposing that one of the world's oldest and arguably the most mysterious ancient site on Earth has been essentially infiltrated by powerful outside forces, which are now inexplicably deferring a full excavation of Gobekli Tepe to future generations, bizarrely stating that they will be focusing on tourism and conservation rather than large-scale excavations as done in all the years prior, going as far as to say that a complete excavation of this profound site is now projected to be as far away as 150 years down the road, which of course makes absolutely no sense. Why on earth would they pull back excavation efforts when Gobekli Tepe is estimated to only be 5% excavated? That's right, somewhere between 90 to 95% is still buried and waiting to be discovered. Again, this makes no logical sense considering that the gravity of this site and just how many unanswered questions we have. I mean, we literally have no idea who built it or why. And the site itself is not even supposed to exist based on the historical time frame of human civilizations that we were all taught in school. And it turns out that the video I made where I raised questions involving the progress of excavations, or lack thereof, created a firestorm among the powers that be within Turkey, and it turns out that they are very upset. In fact, the director of excavations of Gobekli Tepe has called for me to be sanctioned, essentially banned from the site itself, or potentially the entire country of Turkey. And I'll show you exactly what he said in a moment, along with a number of other alarming details. But it's like that saying, you get the most flack when you're over the target. So this motivated me to investigate further into the number of multiple controversies that I discussed in my prior video, and that is how I uncovered that this situation is far more serious than I had anticipated. Now, let me start off by discussing the person who is advocating for me to be sanctioned. The director of excavations at Gobekli Tepe is a man by the name of Dr. Necmi Karul, who is a high-level professor within Turkey and is the head of prehistory at Istanbul University. And as I've been told, he has strong political connections. In fact, he is the literal boss of dozens of archaeological excavations throughout Turkey. He is at the helm of anything prehistory related within the country. And Dr. Krul became aware of my video where I shared the unacceptable lack of excavations, the destruction of ancient ruins, the planting of trees over ancient ruins which are now prohibiting a full excavation, and also that I exposed the WEF affiliation in regards to control of this site. And he went to the media and said a variety of things. Firstly, he falsely misquoted me as saying that excavations had stopped or were otherwise suspended at Gobekli Tepe. In fact, let me play a short 30-second clip so you can hear exactly what I said in my prior video. And although there are still archaeologists working on the site of Gobekli Tepe today, I'm not saying that there are zero excavations taking place. However, the scope is incredibly limited, hence why that 5% figure is more or less the same. The reality is that any meaningful large-scale dig of the remaining 14 circular enclosures that hold up a majority of the potentially 128 remaining pillars that remain hidden underground is currently at an indefinite standstill. Let that sink in. And what I said is the truth, and it comes straight from them. They've outright declared that full-scale excavations will be left for future generations and with a potential 150-year time frame. They very clearly stated that the focus at Gobekli Tepe is now around tourism and conservation of the site rather than excavations. Here is a quote from Dr. Karul. Plans for the near future in Gobekli Tepe were made on the conservation and consolidation of existing areas rather than further excavations. And this was also stated by Dr. Lee Clare, who is the head of fieldwork and research at Gobekli Tepe, who stressed that future digs will be limited in contrast to the large-scale excavations of years past. In fact, I communicated with him directly on X, where I very specifically asked him to clarify that as of right now, there is no plan to fully excavate Gobekli Tepe for the indefinite future. And he said yes. And he went on to say that he doesn't even think that the site should be fully excavated. And get this, he bizarrely made an excuse that they should wait for technological advances in the future that would allow for less destructive excavation methods. But this is complete and total gaslighting. It's 2024 and we absolutely have the ability to safely unearth the remaining T-pillars at this site. I mean, think about it. What alleged future technology will allow us to dig up these pillars any differently? We already have pressure washers and paintbrushes. Yes, paintbrushes which are used by archaeologists around the world to safely excavate. We also have ground-penetrating radar that allows us to see what we are digging into beforehand. So, are we going to pretend that there's going to be a miraculous new invention of pickaxes or shovels or something? And by the way, if he insists that they are continuing to excavate the site today as he has stated, well then he is essentially admitting that they're doing so right now with destructive methods. So, which is it? And that is why I don't buy it at all. This is gaslighting. But regardless, it is a matter of fact that as of today, they are not going to fully excavate Gobekli Tepe in any of our lifetimes, which is my entire point. This is entirely unacceptable. To not excavate this site is a borderline crime against humanity. It is literally the most important archaeological discovery on Earth, and it is the one site above all else that requires immediate excavation. More than 90% of it is buried in the earth waiting discovery, and who knows what unanswered questions about our lost past are waiting to be dug up here. This site consists of approximately 200 pillars, and only 72 of them have been unearthed. And all of them are telling us a story with their various depictions, which means that there are an estimated 128 pillars still buried here. And by the way, here is something important that you should also know, which is that just days ago, a peer-reviewed study was published on Gobekli Tepe suggesting that it could be the world's oldest lunar solar calendar, which raises many questions involving the possibility that this site was indeed a time capsule that was purposely buried that documented a cataclysmic event that wiped out human civilization 11,600 years ago and was buried so it could be preserved for the future in order to warn us for the next one. And regardless of whether that's the case or not, we will not know what it is until it is further excavated. And do you want to hear another wild possibility which I shared on social media which made archaeologists go totally berserk? If you go to the Old Testament, in Genesis 8:20, it states that after Noah emerged from the ark after the great flood, he built an altar to the Lord and took some of every clean animal and some of every clean bird and offered their sacrifice on the altar. Well, what's wild is that many have suggested that Noah's Ark may have rested on Mount Ararat, which is in Turkey, and obviously Gobekli Tepe is in Turkey as well. So with that, also consider that the pillars of Gobekli Tepe almost entirely are made up of various birds and animals. Is it possible that this site is Noah's altar? I know that will sound very far-fetched to many people, but it's important to remember that all myths and legends originate from some truth. And although there may not have been a flood that reached above all the mountains on earth, and nor would there be an ark that physically housed every animal, it's not unreasonable to think that there was a devastating flood and people that took refuge with animals and survived it. Especially considering the 11,600-year dating of Gobekli Tepe that coincides with substantial global sea level rise at that same exact period of time. And regardless of whether Gobekli Tepe was a calendar or an altar built by Noah, or something totally unrelated, we simply do not know what it is today, and we will never know what it is until it is appropriately excavated. Do we all understand what I'm saying? To not fully excavate this site for hundreds of years and save it for future generations is insanity. And it's either because of mismanagement, incompetence, or corruption. Because the fact that it's remained at only 5% excavated for at least the last 7 years says it all. But before I could even ask Dr. Lee Clare more questions involving excavations, he inexplicably blocked me, despite the fact that I was totally polite and professional with him. Why would he do that? Why not be transparent? But going back to his boss, Dr. Nekmi Karul, and him addressing my video, he had more things to say. One of which involved the massive controversy of planting hundreds of trees on and around the site of Gobekli Tepe. In fact, let me go ahead and play a 30-second clip of what I said in my prior video on that. And by the way, here's a question. When exactly were these two orchards of trees, which are located in the midst of ruins of Gobekli Tepe, when were they planted? Because I found an aerial photograph from 2004, and as you can see, these two sets of orchards were not there at this time as compared to a more recent photo. Do any ancient ruins lie underneath these orchards? I mean, that is a sincere question, as I do not know if that is the case or not. All I did was ask a sincere yet very important question. And after that video, I got in touch with an archaeologist who physically conducted excavations at Gobekli Tepe, and I was shocked to learn that yes, all of these trees, 4 orchards in total, were indeed planted on top of buried ruins at Gobekli Tepe more than a decade after excavations first began, which only further validates that there is no intention for the foreseeable future to fully excavate this site, as they would have to cut them all down to do so. And although Dr. Krul explains that it was the landowners themselves that planted the trees, the reason behind it also makes no sense, as he claims that it was in order to increase the value of the land. Well, that's interesting. Are we really going to pretend that planting olive trees at the world's oldest and most mysterious ancient site is going to increase the value in any way? The land is already priceless. And the fact remains that these hundreds of trees are sitting on top of ancient ruins, and their roots could potentially damage those ruins. And it is a matter of fact that it is not possible to fully excavate this site with those trees there. This is the reality of the situation. And the excuse involving the value of the land aside, Dr. Krul's response to me is totally wild and is the part that involves sanctioning me. Take a look at what he said, and I quote, "Yes, there are olive trees in the area, but they are not new. There are attempts to create a perception that Gobekli Tepe excavations have been halted. These allegations are totally unfounded." Yeah, I did not say that, and you're ignoring the fact that the concern is that a full excavation has been deferred for hundreds of years. But I digress, and then he said, "Everyone fabricates a different story. There are those who say excavations are being prevented because the true religions will be revealed." That last part is interesting, as it reminds me of the Noah's Ark Gobekli Tepe altar possibility, but here's where it gets juicy, because he went on to say that these various claims are ridiculous and sad. "We believe that those who make these claims should be sanctioned," and then followed up by saying, quote, "These allegations are extremely saddening and shameful. Those who make these allegations will be subject to sanctions. There must be a price for deceiving the public this way." End quote. What exactly does he mean by sanction? Does he want to charge me with a crime and have me pay something? I doubt that, because sanctions typically involve travel bans. So it seems to me that that's exactly what he means, and obviously there's no real way to keep me out of Gobekli Tepe without banning me from the country of Turkey, as I'd have to be stopped at customs at the airport when they check my passport. And I suspect that that's what he means. First he said that I should be sanctioned, and then he followed up by directly saying that I will be. And that's all I know in that regard, but I've already been told by someone in Turkey that he is a very powerful and politically connected person. And by the way, he apparently has a hot temper, as he was sentenced to 5 months in prison for threatening to violently attack another archaeologist, saying that he will beat him severely. Yeah. And this isn't the only time he's gotten upset, as the allegations that they destroyed ancient ruins while constructing the roads, sidewalks, and viewing platforms while creating the infrastructure for tourism, which created worldwide outrage. In fact, he apparently had 2 public arguments with the wife of the late Klaus Schwab, who began excavations at Gobekli Tepe in the mid-1990s until his untimely death in 2012. And his wife is also an archaeologist herself who worked at Gobekli Tepe alongside her husband. So she knows there was destruction, she saw it with her own eyes and reported on it. They literally covered ruins in concrete, which again is just another example of something that is now preventing a full excavation of this site. And by the way, Necmi Krul denied the destruction and apparently got very upset about it. But perhaps the most provocative claim I made in my prior video involved the World Economic Forum's apparent association with this site. As I've previously shared, a 20-year partnership was established in 2016 involving the Doges Group, which is a Turkish conglomerate that was made the, quote, sole partner of excavations and tourism management at Gobekli Tepe. They are the ones making decisions here. They have unlimited funding and resources as well. And they are the ones that funded all the infrastructure for tourism, which ultimately led to the destruction of those ruins. And as I previously shared, the CEO of the Doges Group is a longtime member of the World Economic Forum. And again, that 20-year partnership was literally announced at the annual WEF meeting in Davos, something that should make everyone's eyebrow go up. But do you want to hear something wild? A whistleblower who has worked at Gobekli Tepe reached out to me to let me know that there are protective roofs that they installed over the site that don't even function properly. They were meant to conserve the site and protect the exposed ruins from the elements. But do you see all this snow? This is there despite the roofs above. All the snow just simply blows right in and is messing up the excavation and eroding the ruins. They spent millions of dollars on shoddy infrastructure and a blatant rush to make millions of dollars from tourism. In fact, the late wife of Klaus Schmidt also put this on blast well over 4 years ago. Where are all the outraged archaeologists to denounce this? But going back to Dr. Krull's response to my allegations, he did bring up the WF's involvement, stating that it is not true that any outside forces have made any decisions at Gobekli Tepe. He said the scientists make the decisions themselves, and he went on to call the allegations fake news and made a comment stating that I was doing it for money as I had a sponsor I mentioned in my prior video. But what's interesting is that he totally admitted and said literally nothing about the Doges group. Now, let me be clear. The WEF itself has no power, control, or authority. It's their members, which have infiltrated government cabinets, corporations, and the media, that enact their initiatives of the WEF, them being members, throughout the world with who they're now working for. So if you think that the WEF affiliation is far-fetched involving decision-making at Gobekli Tepe, wait until you hear this. But let me first quickly mention the sponsor of this video. If you have a dog, we've all been there. Our beloved pet goes from healthy and full of energy to sick and miserable in an instant and at the worst times. Then we're calling vets in the middle of the night or on weekends or right before we go to work, trying to find a clinic that will take us in. It's a terrible way to manage your dog's health, not to mention your stress levels, as well as your monthly budget. That's why you should purchase a pet emergency kit from Positive Health. It contains critical medications and supplies that can not only keep you out of the veterinary office, but maybe even save your dog's life. Head over to positive.com/brightinsight, that's PAWSitive.com/brightinsight, and pick up a pet emergency kit with critical meds like activated charcoal, styptic powder, and more. Get 15% off with promo code BRIGHTINSIGHT today. Go to positive.com/brightinsight and use promo code BRIGHTINSIGHT to save 15% off. The link is in the description and the pinned comment down below. Now, as I was just saying, if you think the WF having any influence over Gobekli Tepe is far-fetched, wait until you hear this. Remember when I said that the partnership between the Doges Group and Gobekli Tepe was announced at the World Economic Forum meeting in Davos in 2016? Well, do you want to know who had the equivalent position of Dr. Necmi Krull at the time of this partnership? A gentleman by the name of Mehmet Özdagan, who is now retired, but he was the leading authority of Gobekli Tepe prior to the partnership with the Doges Group. And guess who he is associated with? That's right, the WEF. In fact, he was at the Davos meeting in 2016 where he gave the keynote address that announced the new partnership between Gobekli Tepe and the Doges Group. And he also gave an entire presentation on Gobekli Tepe while there in Davos, and you can find that presentation on the World Economic Forum's YouTube channel. You can't make this up. Even the president of Turkey has affiliations with the WEF, and that's him with Klaus Schwab. But the president of Turkey aside, and I am going to ask this question once again, just as I did in my prior video, why on earth is the WEF even remotely associated with excavation management of Gobekli Tepe or any archaeological site? Because if you didn't catch my prior video on Gunung Padang, you should go watch it as it might blow your mind, as the associations with the WEF are far more brazen. I mean, Gunung Padang could possibly be the world's oldest archaeological site, potentially being a 27,000-year-old pyramidal structure, yet for inexplicable reasons there is no plan to fully excavate it as of today, despite the fact that ground-penetrating radar has identified what could be a subterranean tunnel and chamber which geologists say has strong potential to be man-made. And if that is the case, it could be the most important archaeological discovery of our lifetimes. Yet the key decision makers are within government positions, and these people are directly part of the WEF's global shapers. If you do not know what that means, go and watch my prior video and see for yourself. Various members of the WEF have seemingly infiltrated positions that ultimately control literally the world's two oldest archaeological sites on Earth. And the million-dollar question is why? And just as importantly to ask, why would excavations of these two profoundly important ancient sites be deferred to future generations? Especially at Gobekli Tepe, where there are literally over 100 T-pillars that remain buried in the earth. pillars of which tell us a story about our lost ancient human history, and we will never know what the purpose of this site was until it is excavated, which, if you ask me, is a borderline crime against humanity. Everyone on Earth has a right to know about our ancient past and the origins of human civilization. And it seems to me that any true enthusiast of ancient history, along with every archaeologist, anthropologist, and academic alike, should be in unison calling for further excavations of this site. How could any of us be content on living the rest of our lives not knowing what unanswered questions of our lost past are waiting to be discovered here? I consider this matter to be exceptionally important, so I encourage you to share this video across social media, whether it's Facebook, Reddit, X.com, and everywhere else, because it will only be through the court of public opinion and the public getting invested in this that any chance of change is possible. And leave a comment and share your thoughts on everything that I've already discussed in this video. Share what reasons you think could possibly exist for them deferring excavations hundreds of years down the road. What sense does that make? And also, stay tuned for us. And actually, let me say this. Is it possible they're hiding something from us? That's the one comment I get above all else. And I'm starting to wonder, like, maybe they are hiding something. I don't know. But tune in later tonight, Saturday, August 24th. I'm going to be hosting a live stream discussing this video, everything in it. I'll be reading comments and answering questions about everything discussed in here. So tune in for that. And also, if you want to support me, follow me on locals.com or patreon.com. Your support there will help me a great deal. And also follow me on X, formerly known as Twitter, as I have a public presence there. I'm trying to grow, and I communicate on there daily and share a number of things on a wide variety of topics. But that being said, my name is Jimmy Corsetti. My channel is called Bright Insight. Hit the like button and subscribe. And thank you all for tuning in. And stay tuned for my next video, which will be up this time next week. Take care, everybody.